Picture a medieval monk, his crime so severe he's been condemned to be walled up alive, left to starve in the dark for breaking his sacred vows. In a last, desperate gamble, he makes an impossible promise. He'll create a book containing all earthly knowledge in just one night. But as the hours tick by and midnight tolls, he knows he's going to fail. So, he says a prayer, not to God, but to the Prince of Darkness. By morning, the colossal manuscript is finished, but with one chilling addition: a full-page, grinning portrait of the devil himself. This is the legend of the Codex Gigas, the so-called Devil's Bible, and believe it or not, the true story is even more shocking than the myth. Unraveling the secrets of the Devil's Bible. Before we get lost in the legend, let's just take a moment to appreciate the sheer size of the object at the heart of this diabolical pact. To call the Codex Gigas a giant book, which is what its name means in Latin, is a bit of an understatement. This isn't just a book, it's a monster. Measuring 3 feet tall and weighing 165 pounds, it is the largest medieval manuscript in existence. It's so massive that it takes 2 people just to lift it. The book is bound in leather-clad wooden boards, with ornate metal guards on the corners. Inside, it originally held 320 vellum leaves, but today 310 of those survive, making for 620 pages. To create a book of this size, it's estimated that the skins of over 160 animals were needed. Can you imagine the cost and effort of a project like that in the 13th century? This wasn't just a book. It was a treasure, a project that seemed to defy human limits from the very start. And that alone is enough to make you think the legend of its creation might just have a shred of truth to it. But the real question is, what's actually inside this thing? So, what knowledge could possibly be worth making a deal with the devil? Was it some twisted, satanic Bible? The reality is way more complex and, frankly, more interesting. The Codex Gigas was meant to be an entire library in a single binding, a one-stop shop for all the important knowledge of the medieval world. A huge chunk of the book is, in fact, the Bible, containing the complete Latin Vulgate of the Old and New Testaments. But that's just for starters. It also holds the influential histories of Flavius Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, and the Jewish War. It has the Etymologiae by Isidore of Seville, basically one of the first encyclopedias ever written. Then there's the Chronicle of Bohemia by Cosmas of Prague, medical texts, a calendar with a list of saints, and even a section with magic formulas and exorcism spells. And then we come to the 2 pages that have defined this book for 800 years. On one side, you have a beautiful illustration of the heavenly city, shining and orderly. And right across from it, on a page darkened by centuries of sunlight and curious eyes, is the infamous portrait, a 19-inch, tall, full-page picture of the devil. He's shown crouching, with claws, horns, and a forked tongue, wearing nothing but a loincloth made of ermine fur, a symbol of royalty, perhaps a nod to his title as the Prince of Darkness. This creepy image, staring out from the middle of a holy book, is the real mystery. What is it doing there? The journey of the book itself is almost as wild as the legend of how it was made. For centuries, the Codex Gigas has been a prized, and some would say cursed, possession. Its story starts in the early 13th century at a Benedictine monastery in Podlages, in what is now the Czech Republic. This monastery was tiny and poor, which makes it highly unlikely they could have ever afforded a project of this scale, only adding fuel to the supernatural fire. By 1295, the monks had pawned the book to a richer monastery, and its fame began to spread. In the late 16th century, it was snatched up by the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, a man famously obsessed with the occult. He borrowed the Codex for his private collection in 1594, but as his obsession with it grew, his grip on power slipped, and he was eventually overthrown by his own family as he descended into paranoia. A coincidence, or the curse of the Codex at work? The book's most dramatic moment came in 1648, at the end of the 30 Years' War. The Swedish army sacked Prague and looted the emperor's entire collection, taking the Codex Gigas as a prize. The book was hauled to the royal palace in Stockholm. But in 1697, a massive fire ripped through the castle, destroying most of the royal library. In a frantic effort to save it, someone chucked the 165-pound book out of a window. Legend says it landed on and injured a person below, but the fact that it survived at all seems like a miracle. Today, it sits safely behind climate-controlled glass in the National Library of Sweden, a silent witness to centuries of war, obsession, and myth. So, could one man really have written this thing in a single night? This is where modern analysis throws some cold water on the fiery legend. Experts in historic handwriting have studied the Codex for years, and what they found is, in its own way, just as incredible as the myth. The entire book, from the first page of the Bible to the last magic spell, seems to have been written by just one person. The calligraphy is so freakishly consistent that it shows no signs of the scribe aging, getting sick, or even having a bad day. This is what fed the one-night legend. How could someone's handwriting stay the same over a long time? Well, experts now estimate that for one person to rule the pages, write the text, and create the illustrations with such precision would have taken between 20 and 30 years of non-stop work. This brings us to a name found in the book's records: Hermanus Monachus Inclusus, or Herman the Recluse. The legend paints him as a condemned man, but that word inclusus might have been misunderstood. It might not mean he was imprisoned, but simply that he was a recluse, a monk who chose a life of solitude to pour his entire existence into a single, monumental act of faith. Maybe the book wasn't a bargain with the devil, but a life's work. A pious scribe creating an unparalleled masterpiece as a form of penance. Okay, so a super dedicated monk spent his entire life writing a giant book. But that still doesn't explain the main event. Why the giant, creepy portrait of the devil? While it seems scandalous to us, showing the devil wasn't that unusual in medieval art. It was a powerful reminder of the reality of sin and temptation. The placement of the portrait is the real key. Facing the peaceful image of the heavenly city, it creates a stunning visual of the cosmic struggle between good and evil. It's a statement about the choice every person has to make. The portrait is also surrounded by texts on how to atone for sin and spells for casting out evil spirits. Seen in this light, the devil isn't being celebrated, he's being confronted. To be a complete guide to the medieval universe, the Codex had to acknowledge evil to show how to defeat it. It's not a devil's Bible because it's a satanic text, but because it's an encyclopedia of a world where the devil was a terrifying and very real threat. Of course, the tales of madness, fires, and war that have followed the book have only deepened the mystique, cementing its reputation as a cursed object. In the end, the Codex Gigas tells two very different stories. One is the story of a book, a staggering monument to human devotion and skill, the life's work of one incredibly patient monk. The other is the story of a legend, the physical proof of a pact with darkness, a cursed artifact that has tumbled through centuries of chaos. The truth is almost certainly found in the quiet dedication of Herman the Recluse. But the legend is what gives the book its power. It taps into our timeless fascination with good versus evil, and our desire to believe that something so spectacular must have an origin that's just as extraordinary. The Devil's Bible may be the work of human hands, but it's the shadow of the supernatural that makes its story immortal. If you were captivated by this dive into one of history's darkest legends, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for more explorations of humanity's greatest mysteries. And let us know in the comments, do you think the story is just a myth, or could there be a darker truth to the Devil's Bible that we'll never fully understand?